Hey, it's Haley at Seamwork, and today I am sharing another Seamwork pattern hack with you. I'm going to be showing you how to draft a Peter Pan collar. This is not a collar that will turn you into Peter Pan. I wish I could do that. I can't do that for you though. But a Peter Pan collar is a style of collar that lays pretty flat to your shoulder, chest, and back area. It's really cute, really vintage inspired, and I'm going to show you how to make it. Okay, so we're going to create a Peter Pan collar, which is a flat roll collar, which means the collar doesn't really stand up at the back neckline and it lays very flush to your bodice. We are going to utilize the existing neckline on our front and our back pattern piece to help us to do that. But I have a little trick for making it easier. You can do this with a lot of tracing and slashing and spreading, but what I like to do is tape my two necklines together temporarily. And we want to reduce, have you ever had a collar that kind of wings up and away from your shoulder? How you avoid that is you want to reduce a little slice of pie from your collar. To do that, here I'm going to overlap the outer edges of my shoulder seam by a 1/2 inch. And that 1/2 inch is going to encourage my collar to lay nice and flat. So I just made a little reference line. I'm going to align these two edges flush right here, but then over here, align with that little reference line. And then you can temporarily tape that in place. Once that's taped in place, you need some pattern paper. And just slide that pattern paper right underneath your neckline and make sure there's enough room to actually draw the collar once we get to that step. I'm going to use my tape as a little pattern weight, but if you have pattern weights, you can do that too. Can of corn, whatever. And we're going to trace our neckline and our center front and back, just a few inches of the center front and back. Before you remove your bodice pieces from your pattern paper, make a little mark, a little cross mark where your shoulder seam is. This can be a notch later on to help you sew that collar in place. All right. You can set your bodice pieces to the side and we can get drafting. If you want at this point, so you don't forget what's what, you can label a B and an F so you can distinguish between your back neckline and your front neckline. Next, we're going to add a little bit of shaping to this neckline so that we can encourage a little bit of a roll. So even though a Peter Pan collar is a flat roll collar, you still need a little bit of roll, a little bit of height to your collar to accommodate the roll of the fabric, the kind of turn of cloth. So on that back neckline, we are going to raise the neckline by just 1/8 of an inch. Very small amount, just 1/8 of an inch. So we'll extend it and I'll make a little kind of squared off line there. I also am going to drop my front neckline a little bit too. I'm going to drop it about 1/4 of an inch. This is all just going to help our neckline lay nice and flat. So I'm going to take my clear ruler, or a curved ruler now, take my curved ruler, and I'm going to redraw my neckline. I want this raised mark to blend with the rest of my neckline, and then this lower mark to blend. I'm gonna do that with the least amount of change to the overall neckline as possible. So don't go too wild here. Just make little tweaks to the curve so that you have that dropped front and that raised lower. If you're don't want to get mixed up with all of these lines, you can go ahead and erase your old neckline to avoid any confusion later. Okay. Now this is the shape of our collar neckline. From here you have so many different choices on what you want to do. You can create a flat roll collar, a Peter Pan collar that has a pointed tip. What's most classic on a Peter Pan collar in particular is a nice rounded front kind of petal shape. But you can do kind of whatever. Even a sailor collar is very derivative of a Peter Pan collar because it's a flat roll collar, so you can have a nice long bib in the back. You do you. This is where you can kind of let your creativity shine. For my collar, I'm going to keep it pretty classic. I'm going to do a 3-inch width and then have it form a nice little petal at the front. So to do that, I'm going to use the grid on my ruler to help me draw a line that's 3 inches away from my neckline. This looks a little bit jagged, but I can take my curved ruler later and smooth it all out. Right now, I just want to establish kind of a base for that parallel curved line. Okay. Now I can clean it up with my curved ruler. And then I'm going to draw that petal shape. Looking good. So this is my collar. I can remark my little notch right here, and I can also mark the center back so that that has a little notch. I'm going to cut this shape out and show you how to draft your under collar using your upper collar. Great, now we have this funky little pattern piece that is our Peter Pan collar. You could go ahead at this point and label it upper collar. And right now, there's no seam allowance added to it or anything, but if you can either have this cut on fold, and this would be your fold line, or you can, when you're tracing and adding seam allowance, you can open it up and add a grain line and have it mirrored on either side. That's kind of your choice. But something that you definitely should do is draft an under collar. An under collar that's specifically drafted to be an under collar is going to encourage this outer edge of your collar to roll under so that you don't see that under collar peeking out. And it's really easy to do. You are going to place your upper collar on some pattern paper, weight it down with something, object of your choice, and trace all edges of it. And make sure that you transfer that shoulder notch. There is your traced collar. And the next part This is very easy. What we want to do is we want to shave 1/8 of an inch off the outer edge of this collar, and that's just going to encourage the upper collar to fold under to meet the under collar. You're going to use the grid of your clear ruler and just draw a line that's parallel to that curved line of your outer collar. And this looks like a weird kind of like hairy line, but this method of drawing a small, I'm just drawing like about 1/4 of an inch line, rotating my ruler so that it lines up at the 1/8 inch mark, and then continuing that. And that, it's kind of a tedious process, but it allows us to make curved parallel lines, which is what we want here. It's things like this that are very easy when you're computer drafting, but when you're hand drafting, they take some time. All right. After all that work, I have a line that is 1/8 of an inch in from the original edge of my outer collar. All I'm going to do is I'm going to cut along that new line, the existing neckline, and the center back to have my under collar. I'm even going to mark it right now. Under collar. Once I cut along that line, I can go ahead and add seam allowance to both my upper collar and my under collar. Typical seam allowance for a collar and a neckline is going to be 1/4 of an inch to 3/8 of an inch, but that's really your choice as the pattern designer and drafter. And that is how you draft a Peter Pan collar. What is your favorite style of collar? Let me know in the comments below, and maybe I can show you how to make it. I'll see you next time. Happy sewing.